SpaceX's first orbital Starship launch slips to March 2020 in NASA document. Let's be honest, we all can't wait for the first orbital launch of the Starship. However, according to a NASA document, this next-generation rocket's orbital launch debut has been pushed back several months to March 2022. What is causing the delay in the Starship orbital launch? And when will the FAA finally be done with the approval process? Let's find out in today's video. But first, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. And if you have any feedback for us to improve our channel, let us know. It would be very appreciated. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. History. In March 2021, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk verified a rumor that Starship's first orbital launch attempt would take place in July 2021. It seemed unquestionably ambitious at the time, but not impossible. SpaceX had launched a series of suborbital Starship test flights to heights of 10 to 12.5 kilometers less than half a year before. Beginning in December 2020, SN8, the first physically completed Starship prototype, came extremely close to landing on its first attempt, only narrowly missing because of an engine and pressurization malfunction. SpaceX constructed and launched Starship SN9 less than 2 months later, with a nearly flawless 6-minute flight finished off by a failed landing attempt. Less than a month later, Starship SN10 arrived, becoming the first of its prototype to land in one piece, unfortunately for only a few minutes. 2 weeks after that near success, SpaceX's third launch, Musk announced that Starship's first orbital launch would take place in July 2021. It seemed all but certain at the time that SpaceX would be technically ready for an orbital launch by the end of the year. Starship SN11 delivered one of the world's worst performances ever, mysteriously bursting inside a dense mass of fog that was just above the ground surface just 2 weeks after Musk's statement and less than 4 weeks after SN10's near miss. However, in early May, Starship SN15 showcased several changes and became the first of its prototype to successfully launch, survive a 10-kilometer test flight, and land, adding fuel to the fires of optimism. Simply said, SpaceX developed 5 Starship prototypes from the ground up in less than 8 months and flew 5 test flights in less than 5 months, all of which were mostly successful. To obtain more landing experience, SpaceX considered reusing Starship SN15 or launching SN16, but finally chose to put the prototypes on hold to prevent delaying orbital launch site preparations. SpaceX moved the first orbital-class Starship and Super Heavy to the orbital launch site and temporarily stacked the pair, Ship 20 and Booster 4, to their full height, forming the largest rocket ever constructed just 3 months after SN15's successful landing. Even though it was just a display of possibility, SpaceX still mounted 29 Raptor engines on Super Heavy B4 and 6 Raptor engines on Starship S20, demonstrating that the company's engine production was capable of producing the almost 3 dozen needed for a single orbital test flight. Challenges no test. However, SpaceX's H1 2021 progress looked to hit a brick block around the August 6th full-stack deadline for reasons that aren't completely gratifying. Starship S20 ended up being put on hold for the better part of 2 months before having completed even a minor test, possibly due to a desire to focus on orbital launch site preparation at the expense of avoiding road closures or inspections that would necessitate a clear pad, making it by far the longest any Starship prototype has waited. Super Heavy B4, which appears to be in the midst of its third round of Raptor engine removal, has yet to attempt a single test, and it's unclear how near the orbital pad is to being ready to support booster demonstration and rocket engine tests. This week, on October 18th, however, the S20 successfully survived its first Raptor pre-burner test, which might lead to a variety of new achievements. And what about the FAA review process? Well, Starship's orbital launch is unlikely to take place in the next several months, as Musk confirmed also in a tweet that concluded with the statement, pending regulatory approval. Musk's remarks may have been intended to put some pressure on the FAA to speed things up. And besides, he has already expressed disappointment with FAA regulations, stating that such procedures might be simplified if mankind is to reach game-changing launching intervals. The process of obtaining clearance to launch Starship and its Super Heavy booster out of the marshes of the South Texas coast was never going to be easy. But when it does launch into orbit, it will be the largest and most powerful rocket in spaceflight history. The draft approvals reception and assessment timeline have been mixed. On one hand, SpaceX's draft, which has been approved by the US Fish and Wildlife Services, provides several reasons for positivity. It is, however, still awaiting permission from other departments. This begs the question of how and why the Fish and Wildlife Department would be interested in space issues. The FAA's evaluation of a permit or license application includes a review of public safety issues, such as overflight of populated areas and payload content, national security or foreign policy concerns, insurance requirements for the launch operator, and potential environmental impact, according to the FAA's official website. That may be what's causing the delay. Keep in mind that some of these departments probably might not work at Musk's pace. NASA report. While some may believe that only a signature is necessary, this is not the case. Proof testing of the Starship, Super Heavy, and Starbase's orbital launch site is also required. There is still a possibility that one of them will not be ready for the orbital launch by the end of the year. It's also becoming increasingly difficult to believe that all three will be authorised and set to go in the next few days, as Musk promised, which is contrary with the NASA report. However, he is prone to fulfilling even the most demanding deadlines. As we can see in the report, NASA explains the high-resolution calibrated infrared cameras will be employed to monitor the surface temperature of the Starship during the supersonic re-entry of the Starship. They are building a piece of advanced multispectral imaging equipment that will be flown on a NASA high-altitude WB-57F research aircraft to perform the thermal observation. The observations deduced from the research will help Starship developers to stabilise surface temperatures. In the summary of the report, NASA states, fabrication nearing completion on Artemis-sponsored imaging system, observation planning process initiated, material samples to be tested to determine surface emissivity, targeting Starship re-entry observation opportunity near March 2022. Conclusion. With recent developments in the FAA's Boca Chica environmental review process, the chances of SpaceX attempting the first orbital Starship launch by the end of 2021 has plummeted from moderate to almost none. From a technological standpoint, it appears that SpaceX could be ready for an orbital launch attempt in a matter of months. From a regulatory standpoint, however, the FAA completing a favourable environmental evaluation and approving even a one-time orbital Starship launch licence in 10 weeks would be practically impossible. Even the apparent March 2022 deadline mentioned in the NASA report focused on the agency's plans to film an orbital Starship descent via high-altitude jet, implies that the FAA's approval and licence process will take 7 months from August 2021, which is still very optimistic. Finally, after 2 months of almost no prototype testing, it appears that SpaceX has decided to focus on completing Starbase's first orbital launch site, improving vehicle designs and manufacturing new prototypes B4, S21, S22, rather than rushing B4 and S20 testing at the launch attempt. As a result, new and improved prototypes like the Super Heavy B5 and Starship S21 are preparing to surpass them. Booster 4 and Ship 20 are becoming highly unlikely to fly. For now, we'll just have to wait and watch how the wind blows for the time being. And that's all for today's video. Thanks for watching. When do you think the Starship will be flying for the first time? Comment below, let's engage. Also, if you are interested in more videos like this, please make sure you like, share and subscribe for more. Goodbye and see you in the next one.